Good afternoon, everybody. I've also spent time in the Big Four, so I will not be using slides. It's great here to be here this afternoon. It was great that we had the AI and ethics piece highlighted. I'm a tech and data lawyer, as I've been introduced. I lead a team of 7 at a law firm. We set some tech up and sold it to Deloitte, which is how I ended up being a Deloitte partner for as long as I needed to be, and led their government and public sector at Deloitte Legal. And now we act for all kinds of companies, small and large, monetizing tech, protecting data, working on AI. Now, this is sort of relevant, I promise. 5 years ago, there was a young junior MP called Darren Jones. And my background has been in UK government. I'm going to stand up here. And then Suki can take pictures of me because I know she's doing that. And so I'd spent last century in UK government, that's dating me. And my experience of trying to work out how South Korea had got fibre to the home was to be writing like letters. I know, it was like pre-email. But writing to find this out, this was not being shared. So in 2017, any Labour MP who was Remainer was not part of the in crowd, if you remember back. And so there was a young guy called Darren Jones, and I was explaining to him, he's also a tech lawyer, and I was explaining to him what the issue was, and we agreed that we'd set something up. What we would set up was then called the Institute of AI. It's now the Interparliamentary Forum on Emerging Technologies. Last month we signed a partnership arrangement with the Mozilla Foundation. But what we wanted to do was build a global network of parliamentarians that could share best practice on AI regulation and emerging technology regulation. And the reason for that was because my experience was always there was such a tremendous gap between legislators in trying to bring in policy and keeping up with what the tech companies were doing. And that gap was widening. So that was that. So we were busy doing that. He's now Chief Secretary of the Treasury, somebody else has taken over. And through that, actually I work with UNESCO, I'm an AI expert without borders, going and talking about the recommendation on AI and ethics. And one of the things I really focus around that is that we have to have a global conversation. A lot of the time when we go on about ethics, it's a bit of a Western view, when actually there is a whole huge swathe of people that aren't represented in the data yet, because the exclusion is still there. Where does this bring us? That means that on January the 22nd, I got a phone call. And I said I was a data and tech lawyer, I'm not a tax lawyer. And someone said, have you heard about this angel investment stuff? Please, you've got a parliamentary network, could you help? Now, for the background, it's called the Financial Promotion Order, and it's linked to a tax advantage. And the FCA had been consulting on it for 2 years with HM Treasury, and there were various trade associations involved. But what the impact of it was doing was raising the income thresholds for you to qualify as an angel investor, and also the asset threshold. And the impact was that 70% of women would be removed from being able to angel invest. Now, the figures are, I seem to be able to recite them and they're all over everywhere now, but essentially 1.7% of VC funding goes to female founders, and women back other women more than double that men back women. So if we were lopping 70% of women off from angel investing, we were stopping female founders from the start. Now the reason that this becomes relevant around the AI is actually what I really believe in is that unless we've got everyone developing the tech solutions, we cannot compete on a global stage, and we will not have inclusive AI. I'm a lefty. How many left-handed ticket machines are there in London? Anyone want to guess? None. How many are there globally? got to lean on. And so this is the idea of where tech that doesn't include people, now there might be a perfectly good business case, but this is the idea of what happens when tech actually acts as a barrier and doesn't enable, and we just take it for granted. So back to this angel investment piece. Now, what I wanted to try and do was come up with some key kind of takeaways of what happened with what is now known as InvestHER. And so the call came in on January the 22nd, please can you help? First rule, say yes, but when you say yes, probably be aware of what you might be committing to. So I'm one of those people that when someone asks me to do something and it kind of makes me feel slightly scared but excited, I'll say yes. But what I didn't realise was the huge amount of work that was going to be going on for the next 6 months, for the next 6 weeks. So on January the 22nd, when I got engaged, and I was doing it pro bono, just to be clear, what I hadn't realised until I started looking into it was the law had already come into effect. The law had already been put on the statute books before Christmas. The law was coming into effect on January the 31st. Now, what's amazing, and like for lawyers, this is just something we know, we learn it at law school. You can't just rip a law up. They say, oh, we don't like that anymore, let's just rip it up. We have to then find another piece of legislation to do it. So, we're back, that's the early in the week. We realise that this is happening, but we have a big issue. Not only that, if you read the politics, it wasn't really a Labour issue, because actually, whether you're earning 100 or 170k, you're a pretty wealthy woman, actually. So we were going to have to work on a cross-party basis to get the Tories involved. And I say we because there are now over 3,000 people who I include when we say we for InvestHER. We'll come on to that. So, we've said yes, and that is the one thing as well. How we get this 3,000 people is for things like Claire and what she's built with the Computer Weekly Most Influential list are amazing, because that gave us the guidebook of the names that we were going to start approaching as we drafted a letter highlighting the plight and approaching the Women and Equalities Committee, because that was step one. Let's write to Caroline Noakes, Women and Equalities Committee, privately. So within 24 hours we had 44 signatories, mainly from the Computer Weekly Most Influential list, who'd all said yes to me, didn't know me. A call that was Sheridan Nash, you don't know me, but we are on a list together, was yes, how can I help? I'm giving Sheridan a name check, but there were lots of them like that. So by Friday, we have 44 signatories in, and the letter goes to Caroline Noakes privately. 9 o'clock Saturday morning, I get a reply. What does a parliamentary question look like? So when you're trying to influence, you have various tools. You have pure legal, judicial review, and you have the ways of putting pressure within Parliament. And this is something that I can talk about in more detail, but these are our tools that we use when we're trying to build momentum and to increase awareness. And they're really important tools because it's part of our legislative process. So, that call with Caroline, and yesterday I spoke in Parliament about it, was really, really significant because it meant that actually one of our legislators, a senior female, had heard us, which meant that the 4 key members of InvestHER, the rest of them remain anonymous for reasons around corporate work and brand, worked all weekend and changed the 44 signatures to 144. So when we went back in on Monday morning with the letter, she knew we were building. But not only that, there were baronesses on a Saturday night extending their network. People, basically everyone, all the women just said, how can I help? Who do I contact? Who can I introduce you to? So 9 o'clock on the Sunday morning, a conference call with one of the baronesses. And it ended with, right, I'm going to call Jeremy now. This is just totally unacceptable. That's when you know you're getting momentum. So 4 weeks later, we are still back and forth with Women and Equalities Committee. We've gone from a peak to actually now where are we going? We're getting annoyed messages. We're getting shared annoyance from the Women and Equalities Committee. But what's happened? And now the law has come into force. We have. But comes to my second point. It's around when you take it on, yes, say yes, but strategize at the outset. Strategize for plan A, strategize for plan B, strategize for plan C. And so we knew we were never going to be able to get the law stopped on January the 31st. However, there was a really significant event coming up in the spring, the budget. And so if you're looking at a finance act or a piece of finance legislation, you want to tie it to another finance bill. So we knew that March 6th was the date. And we'd had messages from number 10 that we were meddling. And these people were sitting at the front aghast. And we knew that others were also pressing. But I think that sometimes even allies struggle to share to apply a gender lens and speak. And that's okay because we can speak on that. But there was a sense that some of the trade associations hadn't quite covered that bit because it was women and underrepresented groups that were going to be most impacted. And when we were speaking to people, I got a reply back that said, this doesn't just apply to lady investors, you know. Okay, but I wasn't asking for a reversal just for the benefit of lady investors. I was just using the best argument I could. So the strategizing. But the other thing we were doing was building case sets and the evidence in data. So the reason that the argument was so compelling was that there was a lady called Rox Sanguetti and a lady called Marla Shapiro, and they were both at VC funds. And what they had done is spent all Christmas building the data set that showed that 70% of women were going to be impacted based on the gender pay gap. And there were parts of the country that were actually no women would qualify to angel invest. I think it was Northern Ireland and the Northeast. And so people like that really were the heroines in this because it gave us the evidence. So we're now 4 weeks in, we've got the data, we're screaming the data, everyone's sharing the data, but it's law. But we're 2.5 weeks away from budget. And I wouldn't necessarily recommend this approach, but it was one that actually, because we knew this was 2.5 weeks later, we had a finite period. We decided to go public with the letter. And the reason that we did that was because although we were getting engagement, we were also putting parliamentary questions in so that they could see we were building more evidence in the event it wasn't reversed by the budget. We had, it was our last resort. We had one shot at it. We also had others, allies who were trying to help the debate, making other suggestions. Now, I'm a lawyer, I've worked in government. I know I've had experience of drafting legislation, and some of the proposals quite simply would not have been able to be implemented in 2.5 weeks, which is why we went public with a straight request for reversal. So that's what we did. And for each day that we went live, and that was how InvestHER became about, because it was the website that we set up. And I believe there are lots of, go and check it, there are lots and lots of signatories out there. And each night we would check our figures, every signature was verified before it went up. But our target was to double the signatories every day. There was another really key parliamentarian called Dame Caroline Dinage. She went public with the letter. She offered her support. She not only offered her support, she offered to walk down on number 11 with press, with the celebrities that backed us and hand the letter in to the Chancellor. So we now knew that there were at least 2 very senior women also bothering the Chancellor with the issue. So we've strategised, we've said yes, and what's the final bit? And I think it was the point that was made just a minute ago. It's the collaborating. So we ended up with, I didn't know who she was, but she's very significant, Grace Beverley, in the younger generations, lady, and Mary Porter's still backed us, and there was a drop of her video. And actually those celebrities came about because it was women opening their book and prepared to write their reputation on the cause. And that leads me to the collaboration and the networking. And so that's the story of InvestHER. I don't think... So ensuring diversity in angel investment, we're actually back to the position that we were. That's the depressing bit, because we just got reversal, which wasn't ensuring diversity in angel investment. But what have we done since then? So InvestHER is now an award-winning campaign. It's a movement. It's a movement of over 3,000, mainly women, but some amazing allies in there as well. It raised the intervention, if anyone saw it, around the Innovate UK in the chamber. So G. Onowura raised the issue and the plight of female founders. And then the Secretary of State for Science, Innovation and Technology responded and recognised the plight. And he spoke at our parliamentary event yesterday. And we've got appetite that's carry forward positions that might have an impact on disproportionately on underrepresented groups in funding. But InvestHER is what the members of that community want it to be, always staying true to the fact that we want to offer pragmatic solutions to parliamentarians to move the dial, to be able to just say, we've moved this incremental step, it was really simple, but actually, look what this has done to the UK economy. And the reason I tie it back to the UK economy is, when I know we're at a diversity event, when I talk about things in terms of equity, it's sort of boohoo me, actually, but actually this is a business case that writes itself. These women, female founders are generate more revenue than their male counterparts. There are huge business cases and huge benefits to our economy if we do this. And that's what we focus on. We focus on the pragmatism of getting things done very quickly. Thank you very much.